So am I.
Good evening. It is 7 p.m. and I'm going to call this meeting to order. Please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance with us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, Cheryl. Will you please do roll call?
Present.
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 Councilmember Judith Dunn.
Here.
Carl DeYoung.
Here.
Councilmember Jared Couch.
Here.
And Councilmember Paula Kelly.
Here.
Okay, thank you. I am now looking for approval of the agenda.
Move that we approve the agenda.
Okay. All right, I have a motion by Councilwoman Dunn, seconded by Councilwoman Kinzer. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Looking for approval of the consent agenda.
Madam Mayor, make a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 5.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion by Councilwoman Kinzer, seconded by Councilwoman Cornegay.
Madam Mayor?
Yes?
I was wondering if we could have a little discussion on point 4, approval of Lodging Tax Advisory Committee recommendations.
All right.
Thank you.
So let's pull this for now and talk about 4.
I'll go first. So I saw in the packet that we're trying to adjust, if I understood it correctly from Dr. Merriman's note, that we're trying to adjust some things in order to better succeed at receiving the lodging tax revenue. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and I saw that we got $0 for the bathroom projects, and there were certain percentages reduced from our big ask. So my question is what are we missing, and how do we fix it?
The thing that we're probably missing the most when it comes to lodging tax, honestly, is another hotel. It's because we have limited revenues. We get a certain amount each year. We probably, I think, if you look in the packet, I believe we had about twice as much in asks as we had available funding to do. So that's really what the limitation is as far as how much money we have to put into the grant program.
Okay, so I appreciate that. So it's because we don't have that asset of another or more beds to put the heads. Hey,
that's correct.
And so that would be kind of a market condition deal. All right, thanks so much.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I believe I had a motion on the table by Councilwoman Kinzer and seconded by Councilwoman Cornegay. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, so we will move into staff reports. I do believe you have a presentation as well, do you not, Chief Tucker?
We do, and Lieutenant McElroy is going to step right up and give you a staffing update.
Good evening, Council. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
So I just kind of bring this to your attention, just give you a staffing update. I'll give you a little bit of the hiring process and what we go through to find a good candidate and that kind of thing. So let's start off here. This is currently our staffing right now. We are missing 2 vacant patrol positions. And we're still trying to fill those right now. And then basically they say vacant number 10 and 11. That's our basically total staff. You have records on the right-hand side. And Lisa Pearson has the transcription reception. She's the one at front. She's part-time. So it may seem like a simple process for hiring, but it's a little bit different for law enforcement, fire, and such. We have to go through all these before we can send an application to the academy to reserve a date. So it takes quite a long time to get there. Obviously, first thing we get into to even get an applicant is actually have to have them take the written and physical test. Then that application and personal history statement gets submitted to us have to take those tests and the scores. And so we go through all these into the background process and try to find a viable candidate all the way to the end. So I'll go a little bit more. Obviously, I said it's lengthy and complicated. All those scores get submitted, they're combined together, they're sent to us, and then we have to go through what is called an oral board. It consists of 3 panel members, and those applicants have to interview and score, and then once those scores are received, those are combined with the scores from the written and physical test. So that's how we get our list to actually choose from. You have to rank in the top 10, and we end up getting it certified by civil service, and they give us a rule 5, so we can hire anybody in that top 5 there. And then it starts kind of the background process, and the background process is pretty lengthy. We have to go through their employment history, criminal history, just check their background, driving record, drug history. Obviously, we're not going to hire somebody who's a convicted felon. There's reasonableness to that person, to hiring somebody. We have a personal interview. We dig into their history, employment history. We try to figure out, hey, is this going to be a good fit for our department? After we get through that process, we kind of decide if they're going to go on the next step. And so at that point, we decided we're wanting to move forward with this guy. We set him up for a pre-psych evaluation and a polygraph to make sure everything's consistent with them. Make sure they're not lying, not hiding anything from us, and make sure you have a good quality candidate. When no issues arise from those tests, we actually will give them a conditional offer, and at that point we can schedule them for a full psychological assessment, get a medical clearance from a doctor, and have a drug test. At that point, we're pretty much done. We're going to give them an offer. If they pass all that, we're going to give them a hire date and start them. Next step is, like I said, quality candidates are hard to find. Next step after that is actually getting that application into the academy. And so this is kind of some examples of our current processes. So we did 10 candidate interviews in June, 6 passed the oral board. There was one we really wanted to go after, but it got picked up by another law enforcement agency. So that list went away. Nobody else made it through that. We did more interviews, and this time we decided, hey, we need more applicants to choose from. So we sent a recruiter out, and we sent one of our officers to the testing site and got more applicants that way, because we were running low on the actual amount of list of people applying for us. So we ended up getting 22 candidates to actually interview with us in August. So we had 22 people on our list. So now, we're in October now. So right now we're halfway through that list. So we have one candidate that has been offered a job and is starting, but as you can see, it's quite a lengthy process. Okay, so we finally got his application. He passed everything, and we sent the application to the academy. Academy date is now March of 2020. So the academy dates are in high demand. Everybody's hiring, and we're just trying to keep up, trying to fill these spots and get somebody on the road. So how long is it going to take us to get an officer on the road? So this one that I just gave you an example of, we started the process with him in August. We gave him a conditional offer. He's starting in November, but the academy date's not March. So he's not going to be through his training through the academy, completed, and then back training with us with a field officer until October of next year.
So that's 5 months now until he gets in, correct?
4 months.
4
yes.
months,
So
okay.
he's going to start November 1.
Okay. So how does that delay? Does it push it back just that much further before you can actually get him on the road?
No, so March, yeah, really, because March date is academy. You can't be a certified peace officer without the academy. And then once they get out, they have that certification, but then we train them for 3 months. So we actually have the officer with us probably 3 months before October, but full and on their own October. So that's kind of the whole process right there. So as it is, it's a struggle to find good candidates. Go ahead.
So will they be with you from November to March doing something in some
Yes, so we're starting something new. We're going to try to get some of the training and stuff crossed off the list prior to the academy. So we're kind of going to give him some pre-academy, set him up for success for the academy, coming out stronger, ready to go, and be ready to roll. I mean, if we can get some of that training out of the way before rather than after. And that's just the position we're put in right now.
Right.
We don't have a choice. If we don't hire somebody and keep somebody else is going to grab them up, and we're back at square one. So that's pretty common. What's going on with all the other agencies right now? They're doing the same thing.
So that's a lot of time and energy over and above what you're already.
Right.
Not only what your job requires you to do, but over and above even that you're trying to make up for the officers that you don't have.
That's exactly it. All the officers are responding to calls. The chief and I are responding to calls right now, just to cover with what we got. And yeah, we're trying to be positive and keep it going and hopefully see the light at the end of the tunnel there.
Wow.
So overall, our goal is to maintain our current vision statement, safe, enjoyable community living. We've always tried to take a proactive approach to handling calls and issues of the city. Right now, we're stretched pretty thin and are often reactively responding rather than proactively attacking the problems and seeking out those problem areas. As you know, Prop 1 offers some of those solutions to current staffing. And so I guess I'll kind of end this with just kind of what it would give us if that it would go through and be approved by the citizens of Sedro-Woolley. We're obviously still looking at filling our 2 vacant positions, but we're looking at trying to add those 3 new patrols to put boots on the ground and help us out and get out there and handle calls. And the school resource officer, which would have really helped with our deals today with kids at school. It took us pretty much a whole day to track down 4 suspects and handle that, interview them, and get them where they need to go. And that was handled by the chief, lieutenant, and detective, and the 1 officer. So it took all of our resources to handle that all day.
Wow.
Dan?
Yeah.
You have a couple of people retiring this year, or?
Yes. So we do have 1 officer that is tentatively going to retire. We're trying to plan on hiring and filling that vacancy. Obviously, it's going to take some time, but there's no solid date on that. But it is in the near future.
And so nobody else from your August recruitment came out of that as a viable candidate?
We're halfway through the list, so we got another 10 or 11 to look at on that list. We just haven't gone to them yet. So each one you go through, we have to go through that process, and once you can't hire them, then you start over and you go to the next one. So we're doing multiple at the same time, and sometimes this is the way it goes. We did have another officer we were really close to before the last one that we just offered, and it just didn't work out with that. You have to pass the test to move on. So that's just part of the process. It's a hard process. And what we want out of it is we want to make sure we're hiring the right person for the job, and not, doing our due diligence and making sure we're making the right decision.
Mm-hmm. So in this 22 that you're looking at, and you say you've got about halfway through the list, do you put them on, this is our most favorite, or do you just pull them off the bottom, the top of the stack?
So with civil service, it's depending on how they score and interview their total scores, so they're ranked. Mm-hmm. If we're only hiring for 1 position, I can only look at that top 5 first, unless I find something that disqualifies that person, or they're no longer available, then I can move down to number 6. So I can look at anywhere in that time, in that
So you
frame.
do have to, like, if they
There's-
got a 93 on their test, and they,
If they're probably on the top, if they're 93, they're probably up towards the top, and they'd probably be number 1 to get looked at. But that's just the fair way and the rules we have to abide by to make sure we're being fair on hiring people.
That's all part of the civil service rule.
yeah,
And something that, well, Dan's got this slide up. So, when you're looking at this right here, this is a guy we let go after we had spent a year getting him, and he never made it through training. So we had to let him go. It was not working out for us. This is a seasoned officer that we brought from Swin and had for several years, but he moved on to the sheriff's office. We don't use his name anymore because he's traitorous and ran away from us. So that leaves us with these 9 here. So this one is going to go away before we get this one back. This one is going to go away about the time that we get this one back, and hopefully, while we've got this one in the academy, because we had another officer that's looking at retiring about the time that the one that we're sending to the academy, he's looking at retiring about that time. So before we realize any of these, we're going to be to here. And what that's doing, in essence, and Dan mentioned before, that is bringing these 2 sergeants, Sergeant Sorsdahl and Sergeant Eaton, and Sergeant Harris, into patrol. Sergeant Harris was he on at 6 this morning?
Yes.
And he was on at 6 and sick, and as soon as we came on, he went home. So this morning, we had 1 patrolman, we had a detective as the 2nd patrol officer, and then I was the 3rd patrol, or Dan and I were the 3rd and 4th patrol officers. And that's what we had, which is not bad for first thing in the morning, except for this morning. Things went to hell in a handbasket, essentially. And I'll talk a little bit about that if you don't mind me talking about it now.
Go ahead.
This morning, we had we had a report on social media. Guys from last night were digging out, or we got some information on social media that a kid was bringing a gun to the school, the middle school. And some of you may have seen that. Stuff started percolating through social media. That came up, and we started looking at that. Then Officer McCombs put together that we had a vehicle problem this morning. We had a vehicle problem this morning where guns were stolen. We had a kid that's a vehicle prowler who steals stuff and has brought gun-related stuff to school, and his name was mentioned. So we started putting 2 and 2 together, and by about 10 o'clock this morning when we were in a meeting, Dan was down at the high school arresting 1 subject who had been involved in this. Let's see, Austin had 1 in custody here, and we had another one being held by the middle school, and we still have normal things going on. So we had 3 suspects in custody, we had 3 missing guns, and fortunately we found out that none of the guns went to school. But this was just kind of a normal morning for us. But it was kind of the panic level started getting ramped up. I was getting emails or messages from the school district, what's going on with the gun at the school, and so on and so forth. So our morning started with, 1 patrolman, 1 detective, and then the B team came out, the admin guys came out. We've got other things to do. We came out on top of that, and we still have normal services to carry out. And those normal services were a dead body, and we had a couple other small things.
I had to go follow up the complainant to get everything with
We had
that.
to find out where the guns had come from and all that. So just to give you kind of an example, this is, when we're asking for these things, this is the reality of what we're asking for. You can throw this up on paper. Whenever you go through the list, like I said, we spent a year getting this guy, and by the end of that year, we were letting him go. We wasted, actually more like a year and a half trying to get to that point. And then this one, we're struggling to get him replaced, and it's just a cascading effect. Before we realize any one of these, we're going to be losing these two. I mean, we could lose Dave at any time. He can retire as soon as his job is open, but he's let us know in advance. Our system and processes just take a while. And this isn't, it's bad, but what it does for us, partnerships with the Upper Skagit, Burlington, the Sheriff's Office, we rely on them because they're in the same boat. They've got the same shortage of people. And we're all hiring from the same pool. You were asking about, did that person that gets a 93 on the list go to the top of our list? He or she is on the top of our list, on the top of the Sheriff's Office list, on the top of Burlington's list, on top of Mount Vernon's, Mountain Lake Terrace, Bellevue, everybody. They get on that same list. And that's where part of our problem is what we do have to offer is a great place to work. We don't have the huge pay, but we've got equitable pay for other places. It's just we are all trying to get the same product, an outstanding officer. And we go through all those processes that Dan was talking about so that we can not have the problems later. We want an officer that I can send to your house, and I'm completely confident that there's no problem. I don't want an officer that makes the headlines for negative reasons. I want to make headlines for chasing ducks across the road and cool stuff like Chris Rogers did. Oh, I mentioned his name. I didn't mean Welch, and I forgot that trader's name. I had a little bit of that while we had this slide up, because this slide is really our telling slide. And it's like we aren't even talking about the very right side, the work that, what we're doing here, the work doesn't change. The number of people doing it changes. But that's still, everything gets dumped on those three ladies or four in our records department, Sergeant Bulletin with three of her crew. Everything that we do and the additional things that the legislature has given us, additional gun laws, different new programs and stuff like that, that all goes through them. And they're just getting hammered.
I think that's pretty much it for me.
Wait, I got a question.
Yeah.
I got a question, sorry. That last one, so you guys are getting another, like a part-time records person too out of this, right?
So
hopefully
from the Miss Pearson right there, on the first slide, she is part-time right now. It would make her a full-time.
Oh,
so it's
I
not
see.
a new body. It's making her full-time where we can use her for more resources and stuff. So.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will move on with staff reports. Chief Tucker, anything else?
Just got a couple more things. I already shared the one thing talking about our gun thing. That hit Cairo, but the guns didn't make it to the school, so they weren't that excited about it. Just a couple of kids with guns. You know, that's what happens. The sad thing about that case, though, is when we got one of the suspects into the office, I was a little concerned that we were breaking the child safety restraint laws. This guy probably qualified to be in a booster seat. He was under 4'9" and probably under 49 pounds. He's a 12-year-old that's probably well under 4 feet tall. And I'm like, okay, so why do we have this child here? But he was out breaking into cars last night and stealing guns. That's why we have him. And it was kind of a sad look. He was curled up in a blanket in our holding cell waiting to get booked into juvenile detention. We gave him a blankie to wrap up in. And he was a very small person. He wasn't much bigger than Renee. Just a little person. But these are the kind of things that we're dealing with on a regular basis. Just this last week, Sergeant Harris and I had to go Sergeant Harris, Detective Hannawal, and I had to go deal with an out-of-control subject up at North Sound. We're getting tasked with more and more of the social services type things, and we're actually kind of a bouncer for some of these hospital issues. We were at the hospital at 7:45, 8 o'clock this morning with a subject who was mental and suicidal, who escaped and was taken off down Highway 20 in a pair of scrubs and no shirt, no shoes or anything. we had to actually restrain a 9-year-old at Skagit Discovery. They'd ripped a hole in the wall, were ripping chunks of the drywall out, throwing it, running wild. They destroyed the office. Another kid had destroyed the office. And this is all kind of not really appropriate for criminal activity, but we're also having children out of control and people with mental health issues that there's nobody else there. So we're getting used as the all-purpose tool to do that. And this isn't anything new. This is just a constant thing, but it seems like we're getting more and more of it. And we've got one officer that was out for a short time with a hand injury because of somebody with drugs, alcohol, mental health issues, a fight in the parking lot of Burger King on the 15th. And Katie Wilson, they were trying to restrain a subject with warrants and who was having some sort of issue, ended up in a pursuit and a car chase out South Skagit Highway. There was a tasering, a pepper spraying, a suspect jumping in the river, officers waiting out in the river to drag him back in. And it's not as crazy as it used to be downtown, but it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of an ongoing struggle. But some of these are the things that if you're following any of us or any of this stuff on Facebook, Sergeant Eaton is posting this stuff regularly. So if you're hearing the sirens screaming and all that, we're trying to put that stuff out on social media. So if you're getting calls from your constituents, it'd be a good thing to pull up on either the city Facebook or ours, and we're trying to give updates. That's probably the easiest way for you all to see what we're doing. And that's all I have, Mayor.
I have a question for you. So under the new gun law, would that owner of that vehicle where the guns were just taken out, like they weren't locked up in the car, so would they be...
We're going to find out. That's what I instructed Detective Hannawalt to look into and Lieutenant McElwaith to take a look at. I don't want to make somebody who had something stolen from them hit them again with charges, but if they were inappropriately storing firearms, leaving a gun in the car, if they didn't have it secured in some way in there, that's a problem, and we're going to address that. So we are looking at that.
Thank you.
But they did report it. I mean, that's a step.
Yes, they reported it.
They did report it, yeah.
And that's one thing that we were thinking about. Officer McCombs had kind of helped put two and two together, but this would also be one of those things that if we get our SRO, that this would be a perfect time for an SRO if we didn't know who this kid was, that we got a name on social media, a first name. Well, the school knew who he was as soon as we mentioned his name. He's been in trouble before, and it's gang-related type activities and some behavioral issues at the school. But a school resource officer would also help put those pieces together, and we're trying to be sensitive. Even though these are suspects, they're also 12-year-olds. Mm-hmm. And so marching down to the Cascade Middle School and dragging them out in handcuffs, that's going to have a huge effect. It's a necessity at some point, but once we started discussing this or talking to them, interviewing them, trying to find a responsible adult for them, which we didn't find, SRO would actually be the bridge between what we're doing, what the school's doing, and making sure this gets taken care of right, because it's the safety of the kids is what we're really shooting for.
Great, thank you. Good question. Thank you.
Long answer to a short question.
Very good. Chief Coomer.
I've said it before, but it's always a tough act to follow when Chief Tucker talks for you. The only thing we've got going, we're having a party. We're doing our auction and dinner this Saturday at the community center, so we encourage everybody, if you're available, come on down. It's a great time. The funds, the proceeds go to a great cause, the Phoenix Foundation, that's for the Burn Children's Recovery. If you can make it down there, it's great. It's a nice dinner. It's a good time. There's live music this year, if I'm correct, yeah. And you'll have a good time. Also, if anybody wants to volunteer, we got our IV class going on on now. They're always looking for new people to stick, and I refuse to let it be me, so if anybody wants to volunteer for that, I can hook you up. So.
Yeah, that sounds like a good time, too. Yeah, the Give Burn a Boot is a lot of fun. I was there last year. You raised a lot of money. Yeah, it is. Yeah,
What time?
encourage everybody to come out for that.
5:30, right?
Yeah, 5:30.
5:30.
At the community center.
It's on the...
Yeah. All right, thank you. Mr. Coleman?
Yes, so we've got lots of fun things happening these days. We are less than 6 months away from the census starting, so we've been cooperating with the Census Administration, updating addresses for them to help the process go smoother for their work in Sedro-Woolley. I have, if anybody's interested in census stuff, they can contact me. I have various information about like what steps are next. The city's mostly done with, I think we're mostly done with whatever our role in the census is, but in April they'll start mailing things out to the residents. That this year they're going to be doing it, they're going to be sending out notices in the mail and by email and contacting people individually. However they do it, I'm not entirely sure which ones they're emailing and which ones they're sending mailers to, but that's how it's going to go this year, and I can break the timeline down for you if you're interested. I attended the Joint Legislative Task Force on Water Supply, which was the state legislature's attempt to fix some of the water supply problems in Skagit County rural area. It doesn't really affect Sedro-Woolley so much because all of the residents in the vast majority of the residents in Sedro-Woolley and new development in Sedro-Woolley will be on the Skagit County Public Utility District water. So the PUD is not affected by the water shortage, but it's single-family residential homes that out in the county that don't have PUD that are affected by the water issue. I want to make sure that we're represented, and if there's any, it does affect our region, and we're a part of the region, so I want to make sure that we're there representing our interest in lending support as necessary. And then as far as what's going on in the city, you've probably seen lots of things going on. We recently received a 200-lot application for a subdivision, which is kind of a key application because it would connect State Route 9 north of the fire station with an arterial road through to Portobello Road, which connects through to Fruitdale and the Swift Center. So that's been a road that's been on the Public Works Department's transportation plan for many years, and no development's been able to happen in that area until that road's been put through because Fruitdale Road was kind of maxed out and Portobello Road is maxed out on the number of units there. So that would open up some development in that area, and that would be the 200-lot subdivision that is been submitted. We're just at the early stages of that. We've barely even looked at what it looks like so far, so not a whole lot to report. But that'll probably take several months before it finds its way to the City Council, probably in the late spring, early summer, depending on how fast the consultants for the applicant move. And then we've also received a conditional use permit for the Skagit County Secure Transitional Campus facility. That is proposed to be a 16-bed evaluation and treatment center that would replace the North Sound facility out at the Swift Center now. And that would be part of phase one and would include improving Highway 20 at the location, which is just west of the old Sedro-Woolley Tire facility, in between Sedro-Woolley Tire and Life Care. So that site would be developed as currently vacant, improve the highway and build an access driveway across the creek right there. And then phase 2 of that project would be a 24-bed detox facility. And that would be a secure facility, and all of this facility would be, monitored and fenced, and people can't just come and go from this type of facility. The county's been working hard on this project for several years, really spurred on a lot by the Swift Center conversion from being just state land with no plan to becoming a research and development hub. So that's what's going on in the planning department. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to address them.
That's great. Thank you. Mr. Burke?
It was a big week at the library this week. We had planned to pour the slab on grade last week and got rained out. And of course, the weather's a bit ominous this time of year. So Monday night, the Sedro-Woolley wastewater treatment plant reported 2.89 inches of rainfall. And the backup day was Tuesday. So I was pretty excited when I texted the project superintendent and early in the morning to say, "Are you still on? We're doing it today." And so they poured 169 yards of concrete, and it all went well. So I guess all I really wanted to do on the library tonight is just make sure that you're happy with the information you're getting in the monthly memo. So kind of in page 240 or 239 through 244, you've got kind of a verbal summary of the month's activity, a little bit of a look ahead, trying to track for you all the agreements or contracts that are signed under the delegated authority that you've given to me. And then Doug has provided, and then I've got a change order log so you can see how the contract may be changing. And then the final page is Doug's summary spreadsheet just showing the budget position of the project. And I generally report to you that we're continue to be on time and on budget. We continue to be on time and on budget. I guess I should note that time does change in these processes. So change order 1, we added 10 working days. That was a result of adding the generator to the project. So a totally normal and anticipated thing. Of course, that increased the budget as well by over $100,000. Again, consistent with the funding that's in the budget. You can see on page 244, there's $167,000 that's unallocated. Well, that may be unallocated, but it was not unanticipated. Those are dollars that we received from the Washington State Legislature specifically for items such as the generator. So I guess I just want to make sure if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them. If there's information that you'd like in addition to this, let me know. We'll include that in the memos. And then as we get a little bit further along, we'll arrange for a city council tour of the building as well. Right now, it's probably not super exciting to walk on the concrete slab, but let's see, today would be saw cutting, and then framing is also beginning in earnest. So if you drive by the site, you're going to see large piles of wood, and they're going to get going on that. So for the next 6 weeks or so, there's just going to be a lot of framing going in. Towards the end of that process, it is probably a fun tour, because at that point, it doesn't require a lot of imagination to see what the rooms will feel like. So we'll get something coordinated for all of you. That's really all I've got at this point.
All right. Great. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, you're seeking feedback. I always appreciate the reports. Thank you. And I appreciate the great detail and the tracking, especially with the change orders and then the budget as that moves through. And what I really appreciate is that it's in our packet, so therefore it's a public document, and we have great sunshine on it, and it's a transparent process of what we're doing, and it's a great document for folks to look up at their own time off the website, and then bring us questions if they have questions. So keep doing what you're doing from this council member. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Merriman.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Just a couple of quick items. The first being we had the state auditor's office visiting us this last week, and thankfully yesterday was their last day. They did wrap up their field work, so it was about a week that they spent with this. Everything's looking very well, and they will be contacting us either tomorrow or probably the next day about setting up an exit conference. And this is where they'll invite all the council members and the mayor and those that have worked on the audit to come in, and they'll talk about the results of the audits and different things that they saw or would like to discuss with council. So we'll be forwarding those dates and having you guys check your calendars and everything to see what would be the best day to set that up. The second item is tonight on the consent agenda, you approved the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee recommendations. And so for the next week or two, we'll be working on putting those contracts together with those successful applicants and getting that ready to go, so they'll be off and running with their programs for this next year. One of the discussions that we do have about lodging taxes, it actually came up tonight, and that is it's unfortunate a little bit that we don't have more money to put into some of those good programs that are out there. You don't even want to hear what our neighbors get in lodging tax money, but it's all driven by the number of hotels that are located in a municipality. So it's something to think about when we're looking at economic development down the road, some of those benefits and things that come. Because the whole purpose about lodging tax and getting that is to expand programs, and it's sort of self-feeding. You invest, you bring people to here, and it actually creates more lodging tax revenues, so it tends to grow like a snowball, if you want to call it. So those are the items that I have for tonight.
All right, thank you. Mr. Couch.
Madam Mayor, nothing to report.
Mr. Owen?
I have nothing.
All right. Ms. Cornegay?
I actually today went to for a visit to the Welch Treatment Center in Anacortes, just because I know they put something in our City Scene magazine, I guess it was last summer, and I really didn't, I've never been there to see what it was like. I've been curious ever since. They were actually looking for a little bit of, feedback from us, I guess. I didn't know that until now after that article, and I guess they're expanding right now, building another building. They're actually doing construction today right next door, pretty much almost doubling their size. Right now they're serving about 200, I think it was about 270 folks. And I was surprised at all the stuff they do. They even do acupuncture, they pick up and drop off, all of these things. And I was hoping that, I have her card for Kim Baker, and I was hoping that we can have them come and do a presentation for us. They were excited to do it. So I'm going to give this to you. And I think that's about it. There was a couple of city council members from other, Burlington and Mount Vernon, and Mayor Boudreau and all were there. So anyways, thank you. That's it.
Yeah, so Mr. Berg and I had opportunity to do that too, early on when they had opened up, and you're right, it is very exciting what they're doing. It's some good things. It's innovative.
Yep.
It's innovative. All right. Thank you for sharing that. Ms. Kinzer?
Nothing tonight.
Mr. DeYoung?
Yes, thank you for the data of 2.89 inches of rain. That was something, and looked like the river came up about 4 feet, but we had another 4 feet of margin, so it was good that it stayed within its bank. So with that, been checking out storm drains that have been clogged with the leaves that have blown through, and we have little lakes appearing now and then, and it's good to see residents coming out and taking care of the storm drains on their own, and also some of the city vehicles coming by and helping with that to help relieve some of the urban flooding issues. Let's see. Then I've also been taking meetings with the U.S. Census, as John was talking about, in order to support the accurate count, especially within communities, and making sure that there's so much revenue from the federal government that's dependent on the census count that we as a municipality rely on. And the number that I was given was $800 billion of federal dollars are available to municipalities. And if we don't have an accurate census, we could be leaving that, not only that money on the table, but we could also have expenses by covering some of those things that could be covered if we had an accurate census and having some of those federal dollars Received some input from neighbors about wanting traffic calming on Wicker State and Jameson Railroad. Those all have in common the last traffic stop sign is on Township, and then it's a straight shot east. So folks are still interested in seeing that be alleviated. Check. Then also make sure that we vote on November 5th, the Tuesday. Drop boxes at the post office on Woodsworth. That will collect your ballot until 8 p.m. If you use the post office, make sure you get it done that day. Halloween's coming up, so be extra careful, especially for driving and making that free right. Make a double check to make sure we're taking care of the kiddos out there as they're enjoying it. And then we're going to talk about 1406 later, and Planning Commission. So still attending meetings with the Planning Commission. Really want to thank all the volunteers on that and on all their hard work that they've been doing to look at regulations for possible ordinance on auxiliary dwelling units. This is the granular, detailed work, or as they say, the sausage making, and it's been quite enlightening and quite rewarding hearing the different aspects of everyone that's serving on that board and what they're able to bring together. And then Saturday, I see Kelsey's here, so I'm pretty sure she's going to talk about make a difference down at Riverfront Park. Additionally, Family Promise Shelter has an open house starting at 2 p.m. and that's on Saturday at Bethlehem Lutheran Church, which is on Wicker. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Dunn?
Speaking of Anacortes, I saw in the newspaper how they're setting rates for their municipal fiber. And are we getting that? Are we going to do that?
Yeah, we're getting fiber, but we are not. You're talking about extending it to the general public. We are not doing that, not yet.
Okay.
So we're watching to see how they do it and how successful they are.
Yeah.
Do you have any comments?
They have good rates. I might move.
So Anacortes as a city is providing fiber to the home, lit fiber. So Skagit Net, the partnership between the Port of Skagit and the Skagit PUD is providing a fiber distribution network within the city that will provide dark fiber. Mm-hmm. So if you are a homeowner and the fiber goes by your home, you could connect to it. You would connect and you would pay a lease fee to Skagit Net, and you would also pay to have an ISP lighted up. So definitely a different model than Anacortes. Neither the Port nor the PUD have statutory authority to provide retail service. The city of Sedro-Woolley, however, does, just as Anacortes does. So, what I would say is I read that same article and I'd thought to myself before, what an ambitious project. How would that work here? And then I saw the rate schedule and I thought, well, wait a second. I bet you 99% of people in Sedro-Woolley pay at least that much for the combination, the aggregation of services that we provide. Why wouldn't that work here? So at least in my mind, it was kind of easy to see the flip. Be very curious to see how they do. That is not a common service provided by cities. That puts city employees in people's homes providing service, as well as 24/7 kind of network operations center level support services. So I think that's a fun one to watch and something that I think we should consider for the future.
Yeah.
If it's successful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're watching them. Thank you. Ms. Kelly?
Just a reminder that we do have Halloween next week, and the kiddies will be out, as will Chief Tucker to lead them down the street. He's pretty good at that, so thank you. He's not in the Halloween parade. No.
That's Christmas.
That's Christmas. Anyway, so be aware that children will be out on the street on that evening, not just in our downtown area, but they will go to homes and things as well, so watch out for them. The other thing that I was going to bring up, which Carl mentioned, was voting. If you have not registered to vote, which probably I'm not speaking to anybody but the choir here, but you can register up to the day of the election. You will have to do so at the county auditor's office in order to have your ballot taken in. It will be from what I understand, a ballot that will have to be then certified to be appropriate, because they'll check the records to make sure you weren't previously, that you didn't already vote. And we don't want to be like Seattle and have 2 ballots going out or anything. Anyway, so that was just all I had was, yes, please get out and vote. If you haven't registered, please do so. And please watch out for kids on Halloween.
All right, very nice, thank you. So I'm going to mention that last Tuesday, I attended the Housing Summit and was part of the forum that spoke on the different needs here in the Skagit Valley. One statement that I heard was that in the Skagit Valley we're short 3,000 homes for the amount of people who need places to live, and that's extraordinary when you think about it. And it's kind of telling as far as the number of individuals or even families that may be living in homes or couch surfing or doing whatever they need to do to survive. But I have found it interesting. I asked John to put together what we have done here in Sedro-Woolley over the last 2 years. And he said that permits for 93 new residential units were submitted, with 43 completed. We have 5 duplexes providing 10 units that are currently under construction. We have 13 manufactured homes that have been completed, 42 single-family residences with 13 completed and 29 under construction. And as far as the number of pre-development and plotting phase, which he mentioned earlier, we have received applications for 210 new single-family lots and 2 duplex lots that have been created with the potential for 214 units. There's residential lots being considered, 144 single-family lots, 10 duplex lots that are under construction, and another 85. So lots going on here. As Councilman DeYoung mentioned, the Planning Commission is actively working on ADU, the accessory dwelling units, putting together regulations for us. That will come, once they have completed that, that'll come before the council for our review. And we're just doing a lot here. We're part of the Home Consortium. And then also, as mentioned earlier, the counties and the cities are joining forces for monies that are being brought back into our county through Special House Bill 1406. So Sedro-Woolley has already passed the ordinance for that, and we'll move on to the resolution. Then on Saturday, the Habitat for Humanity broke ground for the last 2 homes that they're building on Beatty Street. I got to meet the 2 new families. It was pouring down rain, but we were all there, and there was a priest there who blessed the property, and it was a wonderful event. It really was. Councilwoman Cornegay was there. Yeah, we got soaked together. Yeah, that was just fun. And then I also want to say, just let you know that Congressman Larson has been very interested in Sedro-Woolley because of all the buzz that's been going on here. And one of his assistants from Bellingham, Laura Gelwick, was down here, and we did a walkabout around town. She wanted to see what was happening and hear what our vision is, where we've been, where we're at, and where we're going. So that was pretty exciting. And that's about it. That's about all I have for my report tonight. So it is 7:53. I'm going to open it up for public comment. I just want to kind of clarify here. We're going to have a couple of public hearings and a couple of public comments. So public comment, anything that you want to talk about now. The public hearings will be on both the property tax and then also the proposed utility tax. And then later we will have public comment on Initiative 976, but I know that there's somebody here who wants to talk about it. If you wanted to do that in this one and not stay for you can do that as well. If you want to wait, that's fine. All right, perfect. Okay, yes. I'm looking forward to your report. I know what you're going to be sharing.
Thank you very much. So my name is Kelsey Taylor, and I'm here from Skagit Fisheries Enhancement Group tonight, reminding you all that we have a big Make a Difference Day event going on at Riverfront Park from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. This Saturday, October 26th. This is a continuation of the project that I spoke to you about a few months ago. We've been working on prepping the site for the last 2 years, and now is the time. We're ready to plant our trees and shrubs, so we're going to have volunteers joining us to plant trees and shrubs. We're going to have trail building going on at the same time, so that we have community members actually being able to utilize this beautiful 7-acre property that was previously a giant pile of blackberry. So we're very excited about this. If you are finding that you already have plans on Saturday, I'm going to leave a few of these on the back table. We also have events going on every Saturday in November. We have more volunteer planting opportunities, but we also have some salmon sightings as well. So I just wanted to give everybody a reminder, and we hope to see you there. Thank you so much for the council members who have already signed up for the event, and hope to see you out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Saturday, isn't that also the day that we're doing the National Take Back? Mr. DeYoung, aren't you part of that?
Yes, I forgot to mention that too.
Yeah.
So you'll be, I understand you're participating at the United General Hospital for that, and that is the national take back throughout the county at different places, but here it will be at the hospital, and RISE is taking part in that, and you'll be, as I understand it, you'll be there helping out. So
I will be.
Thank you. So bring your unused medication, check that cabinet, and if you're not using it, let's take care of it.
All right, thank you. Still continue with public comment. Anybody else? All right, it is 7:56, and I will close public comment, and we will move on to a public hearing. So, page 33 of your packet, council members, we're going to be talking about the 2020 Property Tax Levy. This is the first reading, and so I'm going to open up public hearing right now. It is 7:57. Anybody who would like to speak regarding the 2020 Property Tax Levy? Be sure to give your name and address. Keeping it to 3 minutes. Anyone? Okay. So 7:57, I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to open this up to, actually, Mr. Marion, do you want to talk about this? And then we can talk about it as a council, answer any questions that they may have.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me okay to this? Great. So just a few slides to talk about the property tax levy for 2020. It always helps to turn your clicker on first before you start. Okay, so tonight's goals, a couple of things. It's a little different this year because we have an extra step in our property tax process, and that depends on what Proposition 1 does. If Proposition 1 passes, we won't be talking about property taxes anymore because that will supplant our traditional process of talking about our property tax levy. If Proposition 1 doesn't pass, then I'll be back here and we'll be talking about property taxes like we do any other year. It's kind of an awkward step right now because we have two processes running at the same time, but we do need to be having these discussions just in case. So what I'll do is just run through a couple things about our property tax levy to get us all on the same boat. We'll talk about the implicit price deflator. I'll be calling it the IPD for short. And talking about a couple of things about inflation and things that are going on in the city right now. So the implicit price deflator, really what it is, it's like a cost of living index or like a consumer price index type thing. Under state law, it's the measure we use when we're talking about property taxes and inflation. The state law says we can look at adjusting property taxes by the lesser of 1% or the IPD. So if the IPD was 2%, then we're limited to 1%. If the IPD was like 0.5%, then you can go to 1%. So that's basically how that works. The Department of Revenue uses that index for our discussions. So I did a quick graph just to show what the IPD has done, and I started back in 1998. It's been up and down. The years it was a little strange. You see, in 2008, when the economy was really good, it was at 4.5%. The next year was the only time. That's right when the recession hit, and it was almost a minus 1%. Wow. Everything actually collapsed. If you look over this whole time frame, it averages about 1.75% a year is about how that comes out. So one of the things that's important to know how this impacts our budget is looking at inflation and what our revenues do. As you can see on this graph, the green line from 2002 until this year, this is what inflation has been doing, and that's being measured by the Seattle area CPIU. That's a consumer price index for urban wage earners and clerical workers.
Okay. So if we take out Seattle, how does that look?
It's hard to say because the Bureau only gives you one lump sum numbers. I've always wished they had something just for Sedro-Woolley so we can match that.
I know they don't have one for just Sedro-Woolley, but I did see recently from James McCafferty up at Western Washington University an economic forecast that did take out the Seattle.
Oh, interesting.
So you might talk to him.
That might be someone to track down. Yeah, that would be good information to have.
Yeah.
The second index I put on here is the IPD, and this is the one that we use when we're talking about property taxes. It is less than what the normal inflation has been for this region like that. So it comes at about 32%, where regular inflation since then has been about 42%. This is an example then of what our Sedro-Woolley property taxes have done. They've grown about 6% over that same time frame. So, and that is what it is. That's just the rate that it grows. But what it does is while our expenses are growing at this rate, our revenues, or the vast majority of them, are growing at this rate. And so what that does, you lose purchasing power because the cost of goods goes up faster than the revenues we have to purchase them with. And that's what this slide is about, really. I always throw the tortoise and hare slide up here because it just really shows what we're talking about. And I've just recapped a little bit what those inflation rates have been. Same thing. So when we're talking about our budget, when I see the expenses so far in our preliminary budget, our expenses increase about 4 to 5% a year. The large driver is wages and benefits, and then materials cost on road projects and public works projects. You can have commodities increase sometimes even up to 50% over a year. They may come back down again, but it makes it really tricky when you're trying to budget and anticipate those things. As we saw with the real estate taxes and with our sales tax and utility taxes, they grow between 1.2 to 2.5%. So we have this annual challenge then of trying to fill this gap. Some of the things that should actually say 2020 general fund revenues. Our sales tax growth right now is about 1.5 to 2%. We're running right in that range. Some of our utility taxes, they're fairly flat. They're staying about the same from year to year right now. We have one, the telephone utility tax is actually going down pretty significantly, and we've seen that in the past. One of the things that the general fund does is it provides money to other funds. The city has a number of funds that all have different purposes. In this case, we have parks, the cemetery, and streets. And as we have maintenance costs or projects we're trying to do, such as paving and other things like that, the general fund contributes to that. So we have those pressures, and that's where you get, say, for streets, when you're doing paving or street projects, those commodity costs fluctuate, have a lot of volatility to them. So that trickles back then to the general fund, who is trying to support those funds. So essentially, why is a 1% adjustment needed? It's to keep pace with inflation, and that's to keep our existing level of services. We're not looking to expand services or do new programs in that. We're just trying to maintain what we're doing today. So which operations are funded? We talked a little bit about streets and that, but other areas we have is our administrative parts of City Hall. Legal, financing, and planning is about 15% of our budget. Parks runs about 26%. Cemetery is just under 5%. Streets is 17%, and public safety is the largest portion, running about 37%. So when we talk about people's taxes and we talk about the 1% change that the city talks about, you have to keep in mind how much of someone's property taxes is actually the city. Currently, when I look at the tax levies between the state, the county, and the city, for every dollar a citizen pays in property tax, 19 cents of it comes to the city. The majority of it goes to the state, and there's some that goes to the county as well. So when we talk about our 1%, that 1% is applied against the 19 cents, not the whole dollar. So it would not mean the entire property tax bill would go up, 1%. So one of the things I wanted to do is just show what the impact of 1% would be. We used this slide last year. You may recognize it a little bit, but I have 3 different homes, one with a value of $180,000, one with $225,000, and one with $400,000. So I take the city's levy rate that the county gives me, and I apply it against that. So a 1% increase for a $180,000 house is about $3.50 for a year, $4.30 for a year for this house, and just under $8 a year for a $400,000 house. And I've broken that out by monthly as well. So one of the most common asked questions I get about property taxes are really confusing. Even when you work with them all the time, there's always odd things about it. And it's changed over the years quite a bit. But one of the most common questions I get asked, if the assessed valuation in the city went up 20%, doesn't the city get a windfall? Isn't there going to be 20% more in taxes? And the answer is actually no, because state law limits the increase the city can get to 1%. And I've shown that here. I've made up a city called Littleville because there's only 3 homes in Littleville. So I have the assessed valuations the same as we talked about just a minute ago. So how property taxes work, your assessed valuation isn't what really charges your property taxes. What an assessed valuation does, it's what your percent share of the property taxes in your town is. So I'll put that just with 3 houses. It's a lot easier to see. So with these 3, oh good, I didn't advance. So with these 3 houses, House A is 22% of the total. It just happens to be $1 million total. House B is 36%, and House C is 42%. So we're going to say the city of Littleville gets $1,200 in taxes. So what you do is each house just multiplies their percent by that $1,200, and that's what they're going to have in property taxes. So really what your assessed valuation does, it's just showing you what percent of the property taxes you're going to be responsible compared to your neighbors. So if we go to the next slide here, we're going to call that year 1. So when we get to year 2, we're going to pretend that home values go up 50%. And let's look and see what happens to property taxes. So we went from $220,000 to $330,000. It's a 50% increase. And I did the same thing going across. And you notice the percents. I've calculated those as well. They stayed the same because everybody went up 50%. But the key thing is right here. The city is limited to increasing by 1%. So it only added on $12. Instead of $1,200, it's $1,212 now. So when you divide that by those percentages, you can see that House A went up $3, House B went up $4, and House C went up $5. So even though home values went up 50%, property taxes went up 1%. So that's one of the things that is always kind of a misconception out there. So I hope that's helpful a little bit in explaining how that works. So for this year, we're going to have 4 things to consider again, assuming Proposition 1 is not a subject we're talking about. The first option we'll have is do nothing. There's no increase. The second will be a property tax levy increase of 1%, and that'll raise about $19,312. The third option is we have a little bit of unbanked property tax capacity. That's money that wasn't taken in past years that is available. So you have each of the first 2 options with the banking as well. So number 3 is you can do a 0 levy increase and unbank that capacity, or you can do both. You do the 1% and do the unbanked capacity. When you add these 2 together, that's $56,000. So number 2 is a 1% increase. Number 3 is a 1.92% increase. And if you add those 2 together, number 4 would be a 2.92% increase, if you're interested in the dollar amount and what that means as far as a percent. So the recommended items for tonight, this is just the first reading. So there's no action we do tonight. We just needed to have the public hearing. I wanted to just talk about this for a little bit. So we've done number 2 already, and then number 3 is just leaving open for any questions that I can help you with.
Okay. So are there any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
I'd just like to clarify for maybe anybody who may not understand completely. If Prop 1 passes, everything on this slideshow will not take place, correct?
Correct. It goes away.
Thank you.
Other than the 0%.
Yes.
Anyone else? Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you. All right, so just the first reading and more to come at the next meeting. So now I will open up the public hearing for the utility taxes and utility rates. It is 8:11 right now. Is there anyone who would like to come forward, give public opinion or public hearing? Okay, seeing no one, it's 8:12. I will close the public hearing. And is this you again, Mr. Merriman, or is this Mr. Berg? Okay.
Okay, so beginning on page 37, you've got a bit of detail there. So there are 4 separate issues presented here, and I'll just take them in turn. So first, let me back up to the City Council's work plan and our 2018 effort with the specific goal of building the Public Works facilities. So a few assumptions here are pretty important. The plan called for a 2-year set of revenue increases. That would be a combination of rates and taxes, ultimately to generate $290,000 a year in new revenue, which is the dollar amount necessary to support debt service on a $4 million project to build the Public Works facility. So that's important. That's goal 3 of the Council's work plan, and that is the basis of the recommendation on utility taxes. So the first item would be utility tax increase of 1%, which would generate approximately $66,000 per year, which is to a dollar what is necessary for the general fund portion of the Public Works building. Just for point of reference, the utility tax would apply only to the city's utilities, so that's solid waste, stormwater, and sewer. It's currently at 9.5%. That would move that to 10.5%. There is no limit under state law for that utility tax. On the rates side, that's slightly more complicated, but we've provided you kind of a table for each rate so you can see the components. For all three rates, we're proposing the 2.3% COLA. So that is typically what the council's done for as many years as I can remember, kind of adjusting rates up incrementally. This is specifically intended to avoid the situation where we hold them at a zero, and then, oh my gosh, we got to catch up, and you have a giant stair step. So just keeping up with inflationary pressures year by year. Then specifically for each rate on the sewer side, the sewer is estimated to use 5.46% of the new public works facility. That requires a $19,760 a year of new revenue. Half of that was included in 2019, so the other half would be necessary in 2020. That results in a 12-cent rate impact per month for an average ERU or equivalent residential unit. So the combination of the COLA and the Public Works building would move the sewer bill from $63.45 a month to $65.03 a month. Stormwater, again, the same COLA, 2.3%, which is a 25-cent per month increase. Stormwater uses, as projected, use 19.12% of the new facility, therefore will require $57,240 a year in new revenue, half of which, again, was raised in 2019, so the second half in 2020 results in a 36-cent per month increase. Stormwater also has a need for a 21-cent per month increase to address the ER&R fund, the Equipment Rental and Repair Fund. Stormwater owns some fairly expensive equipment, and as part of our annual review of how the equipment's allocated between departments and ensuring that the fund has adequate revenue to support replacement of equipment on the schedule, and in Stormwater's case in particular, it owns a Vector truck, which is about a $500,000 piece of equipment that had prior to now been shared with the sewer utility. Sewer utility, however, got a brand new Vector truck to replace this older, less reliable truck, and we're no longer able to anticipate sewer's use of the stormwater unit, therefore transferring all of that cost to stormwater as 21 cents per month. So that combination of factors increases for our standard residential customer the monthly bill from $10.80 to $11.62. On the solid waste and recycling front, the COLA is a 77-cent per month increase. And for this one, it's a little bit trickier because, garbage has so many different services. I used a standard residential customer 68-gallon service as the comparison. Solid waste utilities expected to use 47.96% of the new building, which results in an annual debt service need of $147,088, again, half of which was raised in 2019. The other half would be necessary in 2020 for the next 20 years. That's 87 cents. And then we're having some issues in solid waste with our frontline trucks. We have been running them on a 10-year replacement schedule. The industry is more typically running on a 6 to 7 year schedule. Our proposal is to drop ours down to an 8-year replacement schedule, and the impact to the ER&R fund by shortening that service life is 37 cents a month. So on a sort of a typical residential customer with a 68-gallon service, that bill would go from $33.38 to $35.39. Just as Doug said with the property tax scenario, this is a first reading, so the purpose of tonight's meeting was to receive any testimony from the public, which the mayor already called for, hear any discussion from the council, and answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Any questions?
Yes. Thank you for that. How do we rate on a listing of utility rates in the county as to highest to lowest?
don't have that information in front of me tonight. We could certainly take a look at that and bring that back at a future meeting.
If I recall correctly from the packet, we're the highest in the county compared to other municipalities in the county. And so I'm just checking the veracity of that.
From where did you get the data?
From the packet.
So the only data that I included in the packet was a comparison of utility taxes, and we are high on some but not on all. For example, the city of Anacortes runs a 12% utility tax on solid waste. We're proposing to go to 10.5%. So I'd say it's a little bit variable, but in terms of the overall rates, I don't have that information, and it's not in the packet.
Okay, so thank you for that clarification. So, because we're talking about utility rates in the aggregate.
And taxes.
Right. So it'd be interesting to know. Thank you.
Is that information that the council would like to see at the next meeting?
This council member would appreciate it.
Okay.
I have a question for you. You talked about the trucks that are on a 10-year. You want to go to, was it 6 years to 8?
Well, 6 is probably a fairly typical comparative number. Leo had actually requested going to 7, and in order to make the math, the economic impact, the math work, the economic impact reduced, we're proposing to go to 8.
And that would increase an extra 37 cents a month?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, sure.
Any other questions? All right. We will be moving on then. More to come. Unfinished business, the preliminary approval of the plat for the Samish Estates. Mr. Coleman.
Thank you. I had some notes for you at the last city council meeting about this, but we ran late, so it didn't make it to the council discussion time. So this is a simple 7-lot long plat. It is per the maps. I hope everybody saw where it is. The hearing examiner has recommended approval of the preliminary plat. Now, a preliminary plat is a subdivision into just regular single-family lots. Doing so is an allowed use within the zone. The proposed size of the lots and configuration all meet city standards. So the hearing examiner has recommended approval. I did receive one question about this property in particular. As part of the project they're discussing, they would be filling in a small wetland that is now a type 4 wetland, which is basically a grassy wet spot for part of the year. And it's a seasonal wetland. It's dry through most of the year, although after 2.89 inches there is some standing water in it currently. I checked yesterday. The mitigation for such a wetland fill, first of all, needs to be approved by the Army Corps of Engineers and the Department of Ecology for technical standards to meet the proper mitigation amounts. Like, if you fill so much area, you have to recreate wetland someplace else. So what they're proposing in this project is to use a wetland mitigation bank. So that is an approved wetland bank where you can buy credits for wetland mitigation to be done by the company that owns the mitigation bank, and so therefore the person who's doing a filling of a wetland, they don't have to recreate a wetland on their own property or in another property nearby and then maintain it for perpetuity. They're paying a company to maintain it as a habitat forever. So there's been debate in the past about the wetland mitigation banking over the years, the Department of Ecology has come around to preferring the use of wetland mitigation banks because it is taken care of, and the survival rate of the wetland plants and the wetland function is far better than the examples that they've seen, like private homeowners or small developers trying to recreate a place on their own that might be small. Also, it's part of a larger habitat, so it creates a lot larger habitat for more critters, as I've heard the term used. The other option in a situation like this would be to, build around the small wetland, and that doesn't. I don't know the science specifically, but from what I understand, it doesn't provide really any habitat if you've got a small wetland surrounded by development. It's less interesting of place, a less safe place for animals to rest and live. So. Department of Ecology, at least, has come around to preferring the wetland mitigation bank system, and that is what is proposed, and they would need to get that all permitted. At this point, what's being requested is a preliminary plat approval. So this is approving in concept the idea of the 7 lots and the rough layout and the concept of where access comes from and the wetland fill and all of that, and the mitigation. The details, such as how the stormwater system is going to work. The's been a 30% design done, so they know that with the stormwater that's proposed can work. We've got them to that point. Now they would do all the hard engineering, where the real money costs are designing the utility trenches, where the stormwater detention pond is going to be, how the pipes are going to be laid, all their different angles of fall to make sure that water moves, and all of the minute details. If the city council were to approve the preliminary plat, then
John, I have a question on that.
They would start on that.
If the wetland is filled in, is the idea that the water is not going to be pushed off to the surrounding properties, that it's going to be managed through the stormwater?
Correct.
The wetland mitigation, I don't really care, about who's going to pay who for keeping wetland, but functionally, where's the water going to go? Because that whole area out there is pretty swampy, low, and are they going to fill and build up to where it gets pushed off on their neighbors?
So in this situation where there's a wetland is really no different than any development, any plat that would be designed, whether or not there's a wetland or not. All development needs to follow, all subdivisions and new construction of commercial parking lots and whatnot. Anytime there's large amounts of fill brought into a property, they need to follow the Washington State Department of Ecology Stormwater Manual, which addresses all of the water that comes onto the property needs to be mitigated and stored and released in such a way that it does not affect the neighbors. It also does address water moving across the property. So if it's like changing a drainage pattern, say there's, you say it's a low area, so water would be coming to that property from other places. They would have to address that water coming to the property also. Figure something out about how to manage it. So the short answer is they're required to, on all development of large scale, address stormwater regardless of whether there's a wetland or not. But also, you're right, they would be bringing in a lot of fill, and yes, they will be addressing where the water goes.
My question is, so I see 7 lots, but 6 homes?
Correct. There's currently 1 home on the property already. So it would be creating 6 new lots that would be available for single-family residences. There's already one of the 7 lots of the total 7 lots will already have a house on it.
Thanks.
Any other comments, questions?
I'd like to make a motion that Resolution 1038, TAC 19, be given approval for the preliminary plat of Samish Estates conditioned to the contained in the hearing examiner's findings of fact, conclusions, and recommendations.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion by Councilwoman Dunn and seconded by Councilwoman Cornegay to approve Resolution 1038-19. Any more questions or concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. On to new business. Page 215 of your packet, Initiative Measure 976. Mr. Burke.
All right. Mark Freiberger is at the IACC conference today, which is the Interagency Coordinating Conference held in Wenatchee every year. This is the time when all the various funding agencies get together and set up their booths, and people like Mark walk around and find out how to access their programs and money. So as much as he wanted to be here tonight, he called me this afternoon, are you ready for tonight? And of course I was interested to find out, are you finding some money? So I'll channel my inner Mark. But let me begin with my legal comments. This is one of the few areas where you see me jump in and even interrupt somebody at the public mic. RCW 4217A555 clearly prohibits the use of city facilities for political purposes. There is, however, one very clear exception, and that is what the city is looking at tonight. Under RCW 4217A555, the City Council has the ability to engage in a understanding of ballot propositions and ultimately choose to publicly support or oppose ballot propositions, provided that, number one, the topic is on a published agenda, including the proposition number and ballot title, and number two, that approximately equal opportunity is given for public comments for and against, and likewise for City Council. So this would be very much the same as Sedro-Woolley Proposition 1 from the last meeting at the state level. So just want to be clear that this is totally allowed and we're following the process under the law. So I guess I'll kick off with the staff comments that would count as comments in opposition to this initiative with some background. So specifically, I guess the broad background, I won't kind of try to repeat what I-976 does. Just in a summary, it reduces the car tab tax to $30 a year. So it has significant impacts across the state. I'm particularly interested in sharing with you the impact in Sedro-Woolley. So if you look at Mark's memo, which is particularly on page 217, the Sedro-Woolley Transportation Benefit District, which is the $20 car tab tax that is charged on all Sedro-Woolley vehicles, raises about $200,000 a year. I guess that averages about $208,000 a year. So it's a pretty significant source of revenue. And I just wanted to show you visually, Mark's given you in words what projects have been funded from 2016 through 2019. You can see on that page, total revenue generated was about $833,000. $368,000 of it went to arterial maintenance projects, and $464,000 matched 7 grant-funded projects that in aggregate were worth $2.8 million worth of work. So there's the math, and just visually so you can see what that looks like. And it's kind of small, I recognize that, but if you look at 2016 city projects, the two orange lines there were the TBD funded projects in 2016.
Get closer to this. It's not in our packet, so I'm going to leave the gas and take a look at it.
Yeah, sure, if you need to get a look at it. We still have grand visions of screens that will be more effective for members of the council at your days. Correct. Yeah, So that's probably the Ferry Street overlay, and I'm going to have to confess that, like you, it's a little hard to see. I don't quite remember what that project is.
Township.
So that's at Township and 20, so the right-hand turn lane there. That's what John's remembering. All right, so 2017, I just advance that one for me. So 2017, you can see the projects listed there.
What color are they? Over there, some green ones.
You're closer.
This is railroad here.
Okay.
And then you got a question?
No.
So these are crack seals. This looks like Warner. And I don't have that one.
Yeah, so you can see the legend up at the top with chip seal, crack seal. There's an emergency repair, and then the overlay projects. Let's grab 2018. Much brighter.
Yeah.
So you can see that corridor study. The bright green is the Jones-John Liner corridor study, and then again the annual crack seal and overlay projects. Let's grab 2020. So same thing, crack seal. We've added to this one in the dark green would be the sidewalk and ramp upgrade project. And what is that? Oh, the washtop channelization is in the red there. A little hard to see. So I guess the point, though, is not so much to hit you with the exact list. The big point of this is that if this initiative passes, all of these projects go away. I mean, it's not just a dropping down a little bit. It's a complete deletion. And for those of you who have been on the council for a while and remember the formation of the Transportation Benefit District, we were spending, I think it was about $100,000 fairly consistently to maintain the entire road system in Sedro-Woolley. This $20 car tab fee essentially tripled the available revenue and allowed us to significantly advance our maintenance program. So all these overlays, these crack seals, these slurry seals, these chip seals, and the matches for the big projects are made possible by that fee. I think Mark also wanted to kind of clearly point out two other areas. The city has benefited greatly from the Transportation Improvement Board, the TIB. It's funded really all of our big projects. It's been a huge partner for us. It is anticipated that there would be some diversion of TIB funds if 976 passes into washed out accounts, and there would be clearly some loss from the electric vehicle fees. And then finally, the big gorilla is WashDOT. They're anticipating $1.92 billion in lost revenue. And I think the concern, we've seen this in other parts of the state, is when the state function loses funds, they sort of start sweeping around for other money that would potentially support cities and go to the state. Maybe that's speculative, but I think it is based upon what we've seen historically when these sorts of things have passed. And then finally, Mark noted that the Washington State Patrol would lose about $88 million over 5 years if I-976 passes. So this is not a theoretical issue. This would roll Sedro-Woolley back 5 years. And it's pretty easy to remember what our road system looked like 5 years ago. I think if this passes, you're going to be faced with the question about how do you prioritize a repair plan where you cannot keep up, and secondarily, are you going to be potentially then looking to go to the voters for some new source of revenue in the near term? I think Mark's shared in here that he would anticipate we'd be able to continue with our 2020 projects by utilizing some transportation impact fees as a grant match for the planned Jameson overlay, but the big maintenance projects would immediately drop out. So, any questions I can answer about that?
I just have a couple comments. One, anybody that can't remember when Iman did this to us before, they should look back, because this was very devastating to our state. back when he did it over 20 years ago. And from the perspective of the entity that collects these taxes in the city of Sedro-Woolley, I can tell you that our percentage from that fee is $8. I mean, it's not a percentage. That's how much we actually get in the form of revenue to the Chamber of Commerce from that fees that are collected on those things. And we just recently got to that point. This is another area that would take a hit probably, and there's just no way to look at this without, really paying attention to the overall effect. I cannot understand where Tim Eyman comes from sometimes when he throws out random numbers without having any good data for them. So it's devastating to many things. And I certainly like good sound bridges, and I like nice roads, and I think that our projects here in town have been very well impacted by these fees. So I hope that the citizens will vote against this proposal.
And not to mention the Skagit Bridge thing. I mean, that was all.
Or even the State Patrol. So just to make it really clear, just so you can see it, so the eyes can see it on page 225, it actually lists the projects and projects that would go away. That's impactful, if you look at that. That's impactful.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. So are there any other questions or comments by the council? I do want to open this up for public comment. I know there's somebody here who wants to make a comment about this, so I would like to give you the opportunity to do that. One moment, just one moment, please. Anybody else?
We'll have a chance to comment afterwards.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, so it is 8:40, and I'm going to open this up for public comment regarding the initiative measure number 976. So just name and address and try to keep it to 3 minutes. All right, thank you.
I do have a handout. Am I allowed to do that?
What would you want to give it to me now? I can pass them out to everybody.
So, first off, my name is Trevor Smith. I'm a business agent with Laborers Local 292, and I am a resident of Whatcom County.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you. I'll do that. Go ahead.
So first off, thank you for the time. I'll keep this brief. I definitely agree with the staff report. What I've handed out to the council is an impact study of just how 976 would impact Whatcom, Skagit, Island, and San Juan counties. Just specifically, it doesn't break it down county by county, but just the northern counties. This total, as you've heard, this would be very impactful. You'd lose a lot of the projects that are slated to come up. It would make funding your city's infrastructure far more difficult. One of the things that you were talking about earlier was the increase in housing, the trying to economically develop, trying to grow. This sets all of that back. And not only as a union, but as an individual, I oppose this kind of stuff, and I encourage you guys to do the same thing. $4 billion just out of the budget for the 4 northern counties is huge, and it puts it back on you guys as a city to try and figure out where to find those funds, which means going to your tax base and trying to convince them to carry a larger share of the burden. So I'll just keep it brief with that. Other than that, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else want to make comment? Okay, I will close at 8:42 and open it back up to the council. Comments? Questions?
I already commented. I said I already commented.
Okay. Anybody else? So before you is the possibility of a resolution. It is up to the council. It would be Resolution 1039-19, and this resolution is of the City Council of the City of Sedro-Woolley, Washington, opposing initiative measure number 976, an initiative seeking to repeal authority to impose certain vehicle taxes, change vehicle valuation law, and limit motor vehicle license fees to $30. So
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to move to adopt our resolution opposing initiative measure number 976 as it concerns motor vehicle taxes and fees.
Is that 1038-19?
And I'll second that motion.
Thank you.
You're talking about Resolution 1039?
What?
Is it 1038?
Because we used 1038 already.
Oh, gotcha.
215, sorry.
Isn't it 1038-19?
No, 238.
I used 1038.
Oh.
1039.
Is Resolution 1039 or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
1039.
Yeah, so 1039-19. But what did you say? You said something different?
He didn't say anything.
Whatever was appropriate.
Oh, okay. So we have a motion by Councilman Dion. Is there a second?
I think that...
A second by Councilwoman Kelly. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And let's hope it does not
on
pass.
record to oppose it.
Okay, so moving on, we are now going to go into closed session, and we're going to discuss collective bargaining as per RCW 4231-44. So it'll take about 30 minutes, and then we will return. Okay, we are back. Do we have a motion?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I would like to make a motion that we ratify the Sedro-Woolley Police Guild contract to include the addition of 12.2, the MOU regarding take-home vehicles.
And everybody was all over that. That's great. So we have a motion by Councilman Couch, seconded by Councilman DeYoung. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, that is it.
Madam Mayor.
All right. Yes.
I move to adjourn.
No.
Oh, pardon me.
No. And I do that anyway.
Got excited.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we ratify the Sedro-Woolley Public Safety Guild contract representing support employees.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion by Councilman Couch, seconded by Councilman Cornegay. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. If there is no objection, we are adjourned. Have a good night.